Well, Tom, thank you for joining us. You're a few weeks now into your role as the elected supporters representative. How have you found those few weeks?
Yeah, it's certainly been an interesting couple of weeks. I think I've sort of started the role in one of the most interesting periods of the club's history, in a sense, with the 125 coming up next year. It has been a really interesting couple of weeks, from speaking to supporters, different supporters groups, to reading Fair Game Report, the Crouch Report, and all of these different areas, and recognising, as I think I already knew, obviously the volunteering role that I do here on a match day, you get to see some of the things that goes on, but you recognise that's going on 24/7, and there's often messages from Kelvin and James late at night just to update on things that have happened. And again, some of those might not be major, but actually to feel part of that, the communication's been sort of clear, and it's been busy, I think, is one of the best ways I could describe it.
As a lifelong fan, you no doubt were aware of supporters' views, how supporters were thinking, what they thought of certain things anyway, but the last few weeks have given you the chance to get around to speak to fellow fans and speak to supporter groups too.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that for me is the key thing. We're a couple of weeks in since I had the certificate to say it was all gone through, and I think that for me, there's a big learning curve there to do, a steep learning curve, but actually, I look at my role on a match day. I've probably spoken to 150, 200 people each of the home games we've had, from first time supporters to sponsors, partners, fans in cars bar. And I think, one of them key messages there for me is to try and make myself available. And I think those face-to-face communications are key for me. On the game the other day, someone was able to ask me a question on Twitter. That could have been backwards and forwards for hours. We were able to have a 4 or 5 minute discussion, and the supporter left saying, thanks for that information. Now, obviously there's a difficulty. I can't profess to speak for everyone, but I think that's when we've had to look at different methods of communicating. So, the first meeting that I had with James and Kelvin, I sort of got I think it was a Tuesday morning, I got a text to say, congratulations, it's been confirmed. And then by the afternoon, I was at the stadium having a meeting with them, and sort of went in and just said to Kelvin, look, I think one of the key things is to build up relationships with different groups of supporters and look at what we do there. And I'd been invited along to the trust meeting on the Thursday night, and I wanted to go there and kind of offer a chance to have, a face-to-face conversation about this. So, as my role, I could sit back and listen. And I asked Kelvin, and he came straight back with, here's 3 days, see which one works best for them, and was able to go to the trust meeting. And I don't have the answer to everything straight away. That was a very quick, there were documents released at 5:30, and I was in that meeting 6, 7 o'clock, I think. But actually, that point there where we've opened up the communication to then have a meeting that was planned. Originally, I think I let myself down a bit. I'd planned for the meeting to be sort of 60 to 90 minutes, but I think everyone in the room and wanted to make sure we left without any further questions, in a sense. So we ended up here for 3 hours on that evening. And for me, I think I probably only spoke for about 5 minutes of it, because I wanted to hear individuals' views. There's different members of the trust have different views. There's a club has a view. I think for me, hearing those conversations, I learnt a lot. And actually, yes, I read the Lambert, Smith and Hampton report, and there's a lot of information there, and I don't profess to be a land expert, but I think, it came to points where the question went out there, can we name another scenario that's as good as this one, or if not better? And I think at that point, it was sort of agreed that there wasn't anything at the moment that's there. And for me, I think the only sentence I sort of said at the end, can we all agree in the room that it's been a positive meeting, to which I think it was unanimously agreed that we had made progress, and there's those conversations there. I've then spoken, directly to supporters who've messaged me, and had one-to-one chats with them, some with praise, some with concern, some with worry, and that's my job, is to listen. Am I pro Northampton Town Football Club? 100%. But that, for me, someone said to me the other day, what do you really want? And I said, I want my grandkids to be able to support Northampton Town Football Club. If you think I'd make a decision that would do anything to harm the club, you're very much mistaken. And I've learned quickly, running my own business, that you have to make some decisions with your heart and some with your head. And actually, one of the ways then to engage with the wider fan base was to go out and ask the question, with all this evidence in front of you, whether you choose to read it or not is your choice, but here's everything we've got. Would you support the plans? And, huge majority came back and said yes. Now, of course, from my role, I'm interested in why the people who didn't, and I think I've probably spoken to quite a few of those already. But actually, if I have to go to a council meeting and stand up and they say, so what's the fans' opinion? We can say, off the back of this, here's how many thousand people voted and here's the percentages. And that, for me, would be a lot more powerful than Tom Cliffe walking up going, well, I've spoken to loads of people and they've said it's going to be successful. And I think that for me is looking at the ways in which we engage. I think going forward, I've got some ideas about that. I'm always keen to connect with people and have those details there. I do read all the social media boards, the forums, and again, there's questions on there and I'm fine with that. I think to go into this role and expect it to be hospitality and, you know, all the bonuses that come with it, I never went into it with that. And, you know, actually I've experienced that through my voluntary role before. You can tell when things are going well on the pitch because things tend to swap to, well, what's happening with this? And, you know, I always want to talk to fans about as many away games as I can get to. On a match day, I'll make myself available to talk to people and would encourage people to come and say hello. We're also looking at setting up across a range of small businesses across the town a monthly meetup where people can come and have a tea or a coffee and just ask questions, because I think that's the way we learn things, by asking questions. And I've asked a lot. I'm pretty sure people might think I've just turned up and said yes to everything, but I think I've asked more questions than I've said yes to, because that's what's important. You know, we as supporters of the football club want the best for the club now, the future years and way into the future. And sometimes you realise things aren't quite as straightforward as they seem, and you know, we can only control what the club does. I can only put forward the views of the supporters, and sometimes you're then at a point where you're having to wait on processes to take place, whoever that might be. And as much as I'd love to speed some of them up, it's not always possible. So yeah, it's, you know, I think to summarise it, it's been a whirlwind couple of weeks, thoroughly enjoyable. It's been great to see the results on the pitch, which I'm not taking any credit for, although people are quick to message and say you've turned this around. I think, you know, I'm here for the good parts and the difficult parts of it, and I think that's as much as I can do to hopefully represent as many fans as I can.
You're a few weeks into what is a 2-year role. Have you got any hard and fast thoughts on how you see the role evolving, or will you sort of follow wherever the role may take you?
I think again there's a balance there. You know, when we looked at kind of roles similar to this at other clubs, some did it for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and we were agreed that actually to make an impact in a year is quite difficult. So 2 years seems the kind of right sort of timescales to be looking at. I think again there, I'm speaking to other clubs about the roles that their fans do at board level. Very interested to hear opinions of supporters, and also I think, you know, videos like this to share what's going on and what it's like, because somebody said to me, oh, have you been in a formal board meeting yet? And I was like, well, no, because there's probably only a few of them throughout the year, but actually what I have been in is regular phone calls. I've been into the offices to find out what's happening, and I think that is something that people need to be aware of. And, you know, we've said at the end of the 2 years we'll have another vote. I can reapply if I want to, anyone can put their name forward, and I think that would be then really interesting to look, you know, whether it is me or another person, to share what I've learned to help shape this so it's here for the long run, because ultimately, you know, the fans are a huge part of the football club, and I think to be that voice and to facilitate conversations at times, you know, we've been able to arrange meetings with councillors and various different individuals. I think that's something which, you know, 2 weeks in, I guess it's like asking someone in pre-season what's your view for the rest of the year, and it's quite difficult because there's certainly things I'm learning and there's information that's there. And I think to look at how we engage, I've sort of said publicly I've messaged all of the online groups that I know of, the travel clubs as well, and said, look, I'm going to share whatever I have with you, and then if you can let your members, your viewers know, because actually the one thing I can't really do and don't want to do, because I don't think it's professional, is to get involved in rows on Twitter or Facebook or whatever it may be, because actually I am representing the fans of the football club, and to see somebody having a row at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night on Twitter isn't going to help anybody. But I want to make sure and kind of to ensure that people know there isn't, I'm telling some people something and others a lot more. Here's the information that we've got. Got any questions? Let's meet, let's talk. You have to be realistic. I've got a full-time job alongside it. This is all taking place outside of my own working hours at the minute, but I think when you look at how that role develops, at the end of the 2 years, it'll probably be quite different to as it is now, and that might be looking at different ways of, you know, almost supporting people who might want to look at into the future and being able to ask those questions beforehand. And I think that's huge, because I've said it quite a few times, the role isn't about me as Tom Cliffe, the role is support as representative on the board, and that's the bit that's important for whoever it may be for 2 years, 10 years, 50 years.
Just on that, football fans are no different to any other area of the community. If you took 5,000 of them and asked their opinion, you are at risk of getting 5,000 different answers. So I guess whether it's you or whoever in that particular role, you're not able to represent 5,000 different opinions, but it's probably important through your communication, through your meetings, through your conversations, to be able to take a view on the majority, on what the bulk of the fans want, and to reflect and represent that view both to the club and back from the club to the supporters.
Absolutely, and I think part of that process is speaking to as many different people as we can, using, we've got the travel clubs that regularly take 50 people away to every game, maybe even 100. I'm not going to get the chance to speak to everyone, but within that group they'll have the opportunity to feed back. And I think from my point of view, as you say, 3,000, 5,000, 7,000, you're not going to get everyone's opinion, and there's lots of thoughts. Just have to clarify, I have no impact on teams selection or formations or anything there. But I think, one thing that I do want to do is have the challenging conversations for the where the views might not agree with the majority, but ultimately when it comes down to it, I've got to be able to say the majority of supporters think this is what we need to do. And I think kind of engaging with people, there was the committee for the 125. I love the vote that came out, and that's there, and that's the fans' choice. Now ultimately, by having a vote, you then create people that go, well, I didn't want that one, but the majority said this, and I think that's really, really important to do, but also to have those chats and have those conversations with people. And why would I rather have them in person? Because I think it just flows better. There can be, in 240 characters or whatever you have, there's only so much you can say. And actually, when you can speak to people and have those chats, whether it's at Cafe Track, we're looking at some at Western Fable, different areas of town where people can come and have a conversation, because there are things that happen that you've got to look at and take a judgment call on. And some of those, it's great to get a large number of fans' views. Others, you might go into different areas and say, what's your view on this area? And I've had representatives from various different groups about hopes for development, hopes for fan initiatives, and let's be clear, we're all fans of Northampton Town Football Club. That's what I am. I'm a supporter, and I hope people don't forget that. I know people will agree with me and disagree with me. I hope again we can keep it so it's not personal. I accept some of that comes with the territory, but again, from my point of view, people are allowed opinions and expressions, but let's meet and talk about it, because actually I think we saw with the meeting, and it was 3 hours, but we made, in my view, as somebody sat there listening, progress was made, and I think that's how you move things forward.
You've already been involved in the first few weeks in some key strategic decisions for the club. Has that surprised you in sort of how quickly you've been literally thrown at the deep end? This role isn't a role that you were just voted in and then right, that's done, and we'll talk about it in a few months. You've been thrown straight in at the deep end and very much into the thick of things.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, I got the message from James, I think it was on a Tuesday morning, and then caught up after work, just came into the offices, and that quickly turned into a discussion of, right, here's where we're at, here's what's happening, here's different views, and you're thinking, wow, that was quite quick in terms of, and when you look at that, I think being involved in those decisions, and people might say, well, you need to share all of that with the fans. Well, actually, some of it you want to, and we have done where we can. Other bits of it, actually, you have to be professional in discussions, and sometimes your heart says, I really want to go and say this in public now, and you think, I'm not going to gain anything by that, and ultimately you make a judgment there on a personal level about what's good for the football club as a whole. That's all of us, that's the staff, that's the fans, that's the players, and I think to be involved in them discussions, and again, I mentioned fair game, that's a discussion that's obviously there, and I've read through that document, and I think there'll be further conversations around what that might mean for the club, the Crouch report. For anyone who's interested in it, I think it's 162 pages to full, but there's a really great executive summary, and I'd love to engage with people that want to do that. And if that's individual supporters, if that's we get people from different groups involved in those chats, so we can get a breadth of opinions. The one thing I don't want to be seen to be doing is surrounding myself with the fans who just say yes. I'd say over the time I've made an active sort of, the meeting with the trust was an area where there was questions to be asked, so well, let's get in a room and answer them, and I think for that, if individuals want to have a chat with me, I'm more than happy to do that wherever we can, because ultimately there will be things where when it comes to the strategy, again, like I say, it's been a couple of weeks, I don't know exactly which decisions, but so far I think I must have been told pretty much everything, because if there's a lot more going on than that, it's yeah, there must be even more going on than I thought, because it does come thick and fast with, this has just changed, by the way, we need to speak to that person tomorrow. And again, you know, from running a business in the town, there's different people that I speak to, different commercial partners, sponsors, potential sponsors that are kind of looking at the club and, you know, seeing where we can go. And I think that's so important for everyone at the club to get involved with.
Just finally, then, Tom, if a supporter wants to contact you, what's the best way of doing it?
So the best way probably directly is via email, just purely from a point I'm on and off the phone all day. So my email's clifftom@hotmail.com, and I'm sure you'll manage to put these all over the post everywhere. And from that, well, what I'd then like to do is just arrange to talk to people. You know, will I be able to answer every question in 10 minutes? No, I can't promise to do that. I am on Twitter, you're more than welcome to follow me on there. It's mainly just messages of encouragement to the fans at the moment, but if there are posts that are going to come out, you know, I've asked the club to post various, they'll put them out for me. So I think that's also, you know, we will arrange these in-person events, because I recognise, yes, social media plays a part, but actually it's still a very small percentage of our fan base that are vocal on there. And I want the supporters, you know, we meet many in the cafe that come in and, you know, perhaps don't come to games as regularly as they did, but they want to get involved, or they want to share their stories. And I want to hear everyone's opinion, from young supporters to older supporters. You know, I've already sort of had a discussion around facilities for disabled adults, disabled children, and looking at how we do that. Anyone that knows my day job knows I'm passionate about trying to create things which are more than just inclusive, they're accepting of individuals. And so, yeah, if people want to contact me, there's also via the club as well. I'm sure any details will be passed on. So, yeah, please do get in touch.